Like a garden snail leaves a trail behind, a story snail leaves a tail behind. Share our stories and you may find you can tell a story too.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another Snail Tales Assembly on the theme of remembering. We remember lots of people for different reasons, don't we? We might remember them because plenty of people all over the world think that they did amazing things. That's one of the reasons why we remember the saints. Or perhaps we remember them because they fought or are fighting in battles to keep the rest of us safe and in peace. That's one of the reasons why people wear poppies in November, isn't it? But November isn't just about remembering saints and soldiers. There's a very important week in November called Anti-Bullying Week. Bullying is when people are mean to someone or trying to get somebody to do something that they don't want to do. And usually they do those sorts of things without thinking. That's one of the reasons why it's good to get a grown-up involved, maybe a teacher or one of your grown-ups back at home, because they can help the bullies to think about what they're doing. But sometimes some people can find it hard to go to grown-ups about bullying, can't they? So what I thought I'd do for you today is share with you a story about a real person and someone who we can all remember whenever we need just a little bit of courage to stand up against bullies. Our story begins when our hero was just a boy living over in America. This boy would begin every single day with a smile because he loved listening to music. In fact, probably his best friend in the world was a DJ called Slim, who played music every single morning that the boy just loved to listen to while he was eating his breakfast. Of course, he'd never actually met Slim, so Slim was only a friend kind of friend, but the boy thought that he was a real friend because he played such brilliant music. After breakfast, though, the boy's smile would disappear because he would have to walk to school. And as he got close to school, he found that his hands were shaking and his knees were weak and he couldn't seem to stand on his own 2 feet because as he got close to school, out came the bullies. Now these were children who came up to the boy and pointed at him and poked at him and called him Mama's boy, all because they knew just how much he loved his mum. Now, it's not unusual for children to love their mums, is it? In fact, I'm sure quite a lot of those bullies love their mums as well. You see what I mean about how bullies don't really think about things. But what they did do was make that boy's life very unhappy. He didn't have a smile for the whole first half of his day. And in fact, as it got close to dinner time, his hands were shaking and his knees were weak. He couldn't seem to stand on his own 2 feet because he knew that as he went out into the playground, all of those children would be pointing at him and poking him and saying, Mummy's boy. The poor boy couldn't wait until the end of school because then he would be able to run back home to his family. Now, you might be thinking, why didn't he just tell his teachers? But there could be all sorts of reasons for that, couldn't there? Maybe he thought that the teachers would actually be on the side of the bullies. Maybe they would think he is a mama's boy. Or perhaps he was worried about what the bullies might do to him if they found out that he told on them. Bullies can be quite scary sometimes. Maybe that's also the reason why he didn't really talk to his parents about it. Although perhaps he was also embarrassed about not being strong enough to stand up for himself. So the boy just tried not to think about it too much. Whenever he was at home, he would switch on the radio and listen to his music, and at least at the start of every day, he got to listen to Slim, that fantastic DJ who played all the music that he loved. It was only as he started walking to school that his hands were shaking and his knees were weak and he couldn't seem to stand on his own 2 feet because out came the bullies, all pointing at him and poking him and saying, Mama's boy. Soon it was this boy's 11th birthday and he was really excited about his present. What he really, really wanted was a bicycle, because then he would be able to race to school so quick that the bullies wouldn't be able to catch him. On the morning of his birthday, the boy came to the breakfast table and found a long, rectangular present all wrapped up. What do you think it was going to be? Maybe you can help the boy to open it. As I pull back the paper, let's have a ripping noise like shh. Shall we give it a go? Here we go. Shh. 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 Ow. And as he pulled apart the paper, there was a guitar. The boy's mum smiled at him and said, "I know how much you love your music. Now you'll be able to make your own." And the boy tried to hide his disappointment so that he didn't hurt his mum's feelings. "Thanks, Mum." That same day, he took his guitar to school, and as he got close, his hands were shaking and his knees were weak. He couldn't seem to stand on his own 2 feet, because sure enough, out came all of those bullies to point at him and poke at him and call him Mama's boy. And now they saw the guitar, and they laughed so much about how it was his birthday, and his mum must really love him if she got him something that he couldn't even use, because he didn't know how to play the guitar. The boy went into school again without a single smile on his face, and as it got close to dinner time, his hands were shaking, and his knees were weak, and he couldn't seem to stand on his own 2 feet. But since he had his guitar, he decided that this lunchtime he wasn't going to go out into the playground. He was going to sit in the classroom and start trying to learn to play the guitar. Now, he wasn't very good at it. Not at first, anyway. But as the days went on, he did start to get better. After all, that's what practice does, isn't it? In fact, after just a couple of weeks, the boy was able to play something that sounded a lot like one of the songs that the DJ Slim had played on breakfast radio. So now, as the boy was sitting in the classroom over lunchtime playing his guitar, he had something of a smile creeping on his face. Although that smile quickly vanished, as into the room came another young man. A young man who the boy was sure he'd seen hanging around with the bullies. But this young man actually looked at the boy and asked if he could listen for a while. The boy was a little bit embarrassed, but the young man seemed nice enough. So he kept on playing, made a few mistakes, but you always do that when you're starting to learn an instrument. And after he'd finished, the young man said, "I bet my brother would love to meet you. His name's Slim, and he has a radio show twice a day. I'll take you to see him after school if you like." Well, can you imagine the look on the boy's face? He was aghast. This was Slim's younger brother, DJ Slim's younger brother. So of course the boy instantly made friends with him and was very happy to go along to the radio station after school that day. In fact, straight after school, the boy met up with Slim's younger brother and rushed straight to the station, wearing the biggest smile on anyone's face in the world ever. When they got there, DJ Slim was very pleased to meet the boy and showed him around the radio station, including how the music went over the airwaves. He showed him the round black discs known as records that they would put on the decks and then pop a needle on top that began to scratch around and around. Not the kind of scratching like nails on a chalkboard. No, this was the kind of scratching that produced the wonderful music that the boy heard every breakfast time. Then DJ Slim asked the boy if he wouldn't mind playing his guitar for him. Well, of course, the boy was really, really nervous, but he gave it a go. He strummed along a little bit. He made a few mistakes, but you always do that when you're starting to learn an instrument, don't you? And after he finished, DJ Slim smiled back at him and said, "You know, son, in your hands, that guitar could be a real weapon. But the next morning, even though he had a big smile on his face all through breakfast, listening to the music that DJ Slim played on the radio, soon, as usual, his hands were shaking and his knees were weak and he couldn't seem to stand on his own 2 feet because he had to walk to school. And as he got closer and closer to school, out came the bullies, ready to point at him and poke at him and call him Mama's boy. Well, as the bullies came out this time, the boy suddenly remembered the words of DJ Slim that the guitar could be a real weapon in his hands. He slipped his guitar out of his bag and was about to use it like an axe when he thought about his mum. He thought about how happy she had been giving him this guitar for his birthday because she knew that he really loved music. And also DJ Slim himself seemed to really like listening to him play. Surely it wouldn't make them happy if he used the guitar like that kind of weapon and it smashed into lots and lots of pieces. But then, what could DJ Slim have meant? The boy didn't have much time to think because the bullies were getting really close now, ready to point at him and poke at him and call him Mama's boy. So thinking quickly, the boy held his guitar close to his chest and began to play some music. Now you can help with this. As I play my imaginary guitar, I'd like to hear you say strum. Let's try it all together after 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3, strum. It didn't seem to stop the bullies though. They were still rushing towards him, ready to point at him and poke at him and call him Mama's boy. So he played even louder. Do you think you can do your strum just a little bit louder? Let's give it a try. Ready? 1, 2, 3, strum. Still the bullies were coming close though. Now they were nearly on top of him, ready to point at him and poke at him and call him Mummy's boy. So he had another go, playing the loudest he could. Can you be the loudest you can? Ready? 1, 2, 3, strum. But now the bullies were on top of him, pointing at him and poking at him and calling him Mummy's boy. But as they were doing this, they didn't notice out from the school came some of the teachers. Some of the teachers had heard the boy playing his music there in the playground outside and really liked the sound of it. But they didn't like seeing all of the children around the boy pointing at him and poking at him and calling him Mummy's boy. So they yelled out at the bullies to stop that at once. The bullies got into lots of trouble that day, but the teachers gave them time to think about what they had done. And after that day, the boy didn't get anybody coming up to him, pointing at him and poking at him, or calling him Mummy's boy. Instead, the teachers encouraged the boy to have music lessons and enter some competitions. He even got some lessons from DJ Slim. And so, about 10 years later, that boy even managed to get some of his songs playing on the radio. I wonder if you'd recognise the name of that boy if I told it to you. I bet you would. His name was Elvis. How do you think those bullies felt growing up knowing that they had once bullied Elvis, the king of rock and roll, one of the most famous musicians of all time? I wonder if those bullies didn't feel a little bit silly. But, like we said at the beginning, sometimes bullies do things without really thinking about them first. And that's why one of the most important things you can do is let grown-ups know if you are getting bullied or if you're seeing any bullying happen. Because that way, the bullies will have a chance to really think about what they're doing. Right now, though, it only remains for me to say cheerio, and I hope to hear your story soon. So, cheerio! And I hope to hear your story soon.